So, welcome, Mark. Welcome to the podcast, and thanks for jumping on the show. Marc Miller, and we'll find out more about him. But he's a career coach. He's a coach who focuses on helping baby boomers plan the second half of their careers. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I like to say it's both baby boomers and Gen Xers.
And Gen X.
In the fact that it's all about when you reach the second half of life.
Correct.
And for many of us, that second half of life comes in our 40s or 50s, sometimes later.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have these shifts that occur. In my case, it was back in my mid 40s when I was at my first tech startup. I had a bike accident. But I was 46 and debt free, and my son was out of the house. We weren't rich, but we were financially we were well on our way. And it's like, okay, what's next?
So maybe let's start with what do you exactly do, and how do you help these folks in their career path, and then we can maybe move on to talking about project management and Scrum Masters.
Yeah. The key piece here is to understand who you are. Many of us, what we do is we morph our behaviors to fit how our employers want us to behave. I use an example. I am a closet introvert. I appear to be very much of an extrovert. I'm a phenomenally good public speaker. I can work a networking event with the best. But when I walk out, I'm toast. I'm done. Right? And in getting people to understand who they are and understanding what skills they want to carry forward and what skills do they want to leave behind. These are very conscious decisions. And this is particularly because the world we live in, number one, skills are constantly changing, and what's in demand is changing. Two, we end up developing a lot of skills based on, again, what our employers are willing to pay us for. At some point, it's like, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And then helping people figure that out. And then we can start targeting them at what's next. And then start pivoting them. And we use the term pivot because it's not always jumping from A to Z. It's making incremental steps to get you there, because most of us have mortgages and kids to put through college, and you just can't say, well, I'm just going to go do this next thing. I've made I'm on my 7th career, and I claim that every one of my career changes has been a half-step career change.
Okay.
And that I had 1 foot in the old world.
Yeah.
1 foot in the new world, and there was always a relationship that took me across. In other words, I never did it alone.
Right. So what, like the 7 steps of your career? 7 pivots maybe?
Yeah, I'm 7 career. I've done everything from being a programmer to, it was easier when I worked for IBM, because back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, people wanted you to be a generalist.
Correct.
So it was easier to jump from being a programmer to being being a trainer, to running a help desk, to developing technology transfer programs, to go into sales, to go be an IT consultant.
Right.
I did all those within IBM. And then I've since gone off and been a school teacher, done nonprofit work. And now I'm a career coach.
So since how long have you been doing the career pivot and the career coaching?
I launched the brand in February of 2012.
Okay.
The actual thought process started back in the depth of the recession back in 2008.
Okay.
When I started looking at saying, okay, I had a lot of friends who were they were screwed. They were going broke in the recession.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, who's dealing with baby boomers? And the answer was nobody, because the assumption was they're all going to retire.
Yeah.
And the reality is most can't retire because they don't have enough money to retire.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And that's where the concept of career pivot came about, in the fact that it's going to have to be an incremental process.
Correct. And the study that I am doing is focused around Scrum Masters. and Scrum Masters are, kind of project managers in the agile world. Have you had anyone of sort of these profile of folks that you have either coached or taken through your programs?
Yeah, it's rather interesting. I've dealt with a lot of product managers.
Okay.
Who end up in that world, and the challenge comes into where have they been before. Now I come out of the technology world, a lot of hardware, and a lot of hardware now has become commodities.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And so they're not this huge projects. And I was on big, huge software projects which use traditional waterfall.
Correct.
So as you move to agile, that is a radical shift in thinking of saying, okay, I'm just going to iterate my way through it. And we've seen that in a number of companies here in Austin who have tried to make that shift. One of them is a hosting company that will remain unnamed.
Okay.
That went from being a hosting company to a product company. And that was a painful transformation, and they're still not done.
Okay.
But and I've worked with a couple of project managers who have come out of the traditional world, and they suddenly go, well, if I want to keep working, I got to move to this agile space. And the challenge comes is, yes, they can go get Scrum Master certified.
Right.
But then how do they actually prove it? They can do it. The other piece is, and I helped a product manager who came out of my last company. They moved to being a hardware company to being a cloud-based software company.
Right. Okay.
And suddenly being able to go from a product manager to doing hardware to doing that cloud-based was painful. It's a combination of its different thought process. By the way, you're dealing with a lot of young kids.
Yes.
And rather interesting, this gentleman, when I got him to he got his next job again with a similar kind of company, he was a hockey coach.
Oh.
He actually honed those skills 20 plus years being a hockey coach.
Correct.
Right? Of learning how to, a lot of millennials like to be asked and not told. Right?
Yes.
And that's you may think that's a minor difference. It is for someone who's used to being a project manager from telling people what to do, suddenly going asking is really hard.
No, that is really a good point, because at the end of the day, you are coaching your team, and the coaching fundamentals remain the same. In that space, the coaching fundamentals and the coaching domain stays the same. It just happens that you are now coaching a team in an agile and technology space, but you're still coaching them in terms of how to communicate, how to operate, how to do conflict resolution. All that is still applicable. That's a great example, actually.
Yeah, and the other piece is, because of software development teams tend to be so distributed, is learning how to both multicultural. I'll use the example. One of my board members at my job club worked for IBM, and he was managing a software team in Pakistan. And I kept on trying to explain to him, you have to stop telling them. So in someone coming from an indirect culture, which is Pakistani, Indian, Chinese, you would never tell them or ask them, can you have this done by Friday? Because the answer will always be yes.
Correct.
What you have to learn is how to back into it is, okay, when can you have this done?
Correct.
And then what can you have? How can we get this done by Friday? What has to happen?
Correct.
And then you can figure it out. Well, for most, when you have teams in, Israel, Germany, France, Pakistan, you have to learn that you have to talk to them differently. And I've taught in 40 different countries. So you learn how to deal with the different communication styles, and the fact that depending, you may not see them, and developing that relationship without ever having seen them. You can do it, but you have to do it consciously.
Correct. You mentioned that technology is changing. You look at cloud, you look at infrastructure as a service, hardware going away. Really speaking, infrastructure is more software than hardware nowadays. Sort of in this sort of rapidly changing technology space. Have you seen these product and project managers struggle to keep up with just the pace at which they have to learn new things?
Yeah, it's the part of it is because so much has become commodity,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a different way of doing business.
Correct.
If you take, I'll use the example. One of the things we're seeing here in Austin is 10 years ago, if you wanted to do a software startup, you probably need $1 million. You need to go find some space, right?
Yeah.
You need to buy a lot of expensive tools.
Correct.
Now you get some space on AWS.
Yeah.
You get some free tools, and you're up and running, and you're probably going to go get some space at WeWorks, co-working space, and you're up and running for maybe $10,000.
Correct.
The other piece is because I've been through 2 major acquisitions,
Mm-hmm.
both of them were over $400 million. And today, nobody really wants to go public, and they just want to build one product,
Correct.
sell it, and move on to the next thing.
Correct.
So that's a very different mentality.
It is.
It's rather interesting. What it reminds me of, back in, I went to China starting in early 2000,
Okay.
and I was dealing with Huawei. And we were doing network processors, and we saw chaos. There were all these projects, and there were a lot of competing projects, and I didn't understand why. And I finally found a woman who was an American who had done her master's dissertation on this exact topic. And I finally got her on the phone, and she explained, this is the Cultural Revolution. I said, Cultural Revolution? He says, yeah, from 67 to 77, Mao shut down all the universities. And basically all the intellectuals were killed. And so when Mao died in 77, the universities started cranking up back in the late 70s. So the first graduates were coming out in the mid-1980s.
Right.
Those were the people I was dealing with. What she explained was when they graduated from college, they had no mentors. No one knew more than they did.
Correct.
And so think about it. If you were 22 or 23, you come out of college and you're the smartest guy on the block. We all know when we're particularly 23-year-old guys are stupid.
Right. As I have been doing this research of mine, one of the things that has come up is, as you said, sort of small pivots. Keep one leg in your old career, keep and the next in the next thing. One of the things that has come up is, should the project manager or the Scrum Master that we have, should they be technical at all? Should they just focus on Scrum and understand Agile and coaching, or should they also understand technology and be there? There's one school of thought that says you have to have that. A Scrum Master cannot be only a Scrum Master, because the path forward is really bumpy. And on the other hand, people say that that you better have another skill, like a pie-shaped skill or a T-shaped skill. Really pie-shaped, yeah, at least 2 skills.
Yeah, I'll put it this way: in theory, a Scrum Master should be simply a good manager.
Mm-hmm.
In theory.
And
there are the other thing to look at is, are you skilled in the domain that you're building a product for?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have to be technically skilled?
Correct.
Now, the technical skills, if you are able to partner with someone who has the technical skills, then you don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we're kind of growing. Rather interesting. I deal with a lot of product managers.
Mm-hmm.
And product managers, they tend to get branded around the technology and the product that they manage.
Correct.
Right?
That's right.
Right? So they may be a product manager of an internet product,
Mm-hmm.
or they might be a product manager of a hardware product, or they might be a product manager of a SaaS product, or, you know.
Correct. Yeah.
And what happens is they get branded around that product.
Right.
And they want to change domains into another product.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is it's really hard.
It is.
And the reason why, and they go, but wait a minute, the product management skills are much harder to acquire
mm-hmm.
than the domain skills.
Yeah.
Yet everyone will look at your domain skills first.
They will. I know.
And by the way, this transpires into project managers.
It does.
I had a guy who, a top flight IT project manager, top flight. He taught at the PMI. He's revered,
mm-hmm.
and he wanted to get into medical.
Mm.
And so I knew the COO at one of our major clinics here. It's a very huge organization, and I sent him to talk to Pat.
Okay.
And Pat looked at his resume, and she sat down with him and said, "You know what? You have a great resume.
Mm-hmm.
You are probably a great project manager. You don't have any medical experience. We shouldn't care. We will." And so there is this transition of, and I wrote on my blog about one gentleman here in Austin who wanted to get into smart grid.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have the smart grid, but he was product manager.
Right.
So what he did was brilliant. He has a blog, and it's the technicalproductmanagement.com or something like that.
Okay.
And the interesting one was what he did is for 18 months, every month he interviewed somebody in the smart grid industry.
That's cool.
And after 18 months, he had street cred.
Right.
He did one post every month. He did it very consistently. And he eventually got a job in the smart grid as a product manager in smart grid. He had to move to San Francisco from Austin. But it was he somewhat demonstrated that he had he branded himself very carefully around where he wanted to go.
Through correlation to all these other folks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but he did it very, very strategically.
But how many people do that? How many people will invest 18 months in doing, interviews?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got a client in Germany right now who's a CIO of a small, medium gas petroleum chemical company.
Okay.
500 employees, 5 continents kind of deal. And we've rebranded him as a digital transformation expert. He wrote a 23-page white paper. He's doing videos.
Okay.
He is now talking at a bunch of conferences as the small and medium business digital transformation expert.
Correct.
And we specifically branded him around that. And he's producing collateral. And by the way, he's having a good time doing it.
Yes.
But it was done very strategically.
Correct.
It just won't happen. It won't happen.
Yeah, it won't happen like this.
Right? If it takes time, it takes deep thought. It's producing the collateral that demonstrate that you know your stuff.
Correct.
Don't tell me you know your stuff. Show me you know your stuff.
I know. In Agile, when we do our demos, we say, don't tell, show me.
Yes. And again, the Agile environment is so different from where we've come from.
Correct.
So in some ways, if you're making that transition into Agile, you may have to do your own projects. Or you may have to write about Agile.
Correct.
Or you may have to do something that shows that you actually you get it.
Yeah, you should be in that space. You have to be in the space. I'm just looking at the time. It's just 2 minutes to 5. Do you have 5 more minutes to go?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, but this is great conversation. Scrum Masters, really speaking, if 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 I was a Scrum, I am a Scrum Master, and if I were to come to you, do you really look at it and as an individual case by case basis, or do you have a process which is
Well, what I do is I use the Berkman assessment,
okay?
and I will literally pick your personality apart.
Okay.
I will. One of the things I love about the Berkman, it tells you how you behave,
Mm-hmm.
and then how you want to be treated in that same behavior, same area.
Okay.
And when you get big gaps,
Mm-hmm.
as I said, my classic example, I'm a closet introvert.
Yeah.
I behave extrovertedly. I've got a number of project managers. I've got a number of them who I call structured anarchists.
Yeah.
In other words, they appear very orderly. If you look at them, every piece of clothing is in place.
Right.
Their hair is very well groomed.
Mm-hmm.
You speak to them; they speak very methodically. They're very organized. And by the way, where they are at their best is walking into chaos and bringing order.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But by the way, I call them structured anarchists because the rules have to be theirs.
Yes.
In other words, they can't walk into a situation that's very structured and they can't change it.
Correct.
And so what happens is with many of them in their careers, what's happened is they've walked in, they've gone into problem projects, fixed them. And when they get them fixed, they're told, oh, you need to go run the project now.
Right.
And they get miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I've had to teach them to do is go, no, I fixed the problem. Give me another project to fix.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And it is not obvious that they are like that.
Mm-hmm.
From their behavior, they are very orderly.
This is true.
Right? And you would never know that. And so I will pick your personality apart. Also, look for your odd combinations of behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
I had one gentleman who I branded a cause-driven, people-oriented geek.
Okay. Okay.
It's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
He couldn't work for just anyone.
Okay.
He was very cause-driven. He was very technical, but he was very people-oriented.
Correct.
Right? He needed to be able to articulate that and tell people because that's what made him different.
Different. Right. Right.
And we all need to know, how are we special?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And very often we don't know that because we don't see ourselves the way other people see us.
Correct. And that sort of goes into what you were talking about is a lot of things becoming commodity today.
Yep.
So
I'll use the example. My product manager who came out of my last company, we talked about him being a hockey coach, and he's done it a long time.
Yeah.
And he actually had a different style of the way he worked with the kids. And he worked with 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids.
Yeah.
That he did at work. And I said, you need to be able to bring that to work.
Right.
And sell that.
Right.
Right? And he's suddenly realizing that a lot of what he did with his hockey made him better dealing in an agile environment.
Correct.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Was till we discussed it in that way, and I framed it that way for him. He finally went, oh, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. It's true.
And so I like to get you to understand who you are, what your value propositions are, what makes you special. And because one of the things I've learned, I've done about 500 of these so far, we are all so different. By the way, one of the things I've run into, I've had several clients who've come out of both India and China who are what I refer to as cultural dyslexics.
Okay.
And what I mean is they were born in Asia.
All right.
Formative years were in Asia, but then they got their education in the West.
Okay.
So they went from a very indirect culture to a very direct culture, usually in their formative years.
Mm-hmm.
Challenge comes in as they have a mixture of those behaviors, and one of their challenges is they don't feel like they fit in either anymore.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
And so they're kind of and they've got these mixed behaviors. Like I said, one client who was very, very indirect in her communication style.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, she wanted everybody to be real direct back to
her. Oh.
Right?
Like Minnesota Nice.
Yes. Right? And it wasn't until we kind of worked through it she understood, okay, that's why I get pissed off. Or just simply because her natural style, which is again variation, was to be very indirect.
Correct.
And knowing that, yes, I'm allowed to be more direct. And in certain situations, if I simply tell people to do things rather than asking them, she gets better results.
Right. Great. No, this has been such a great conversation. I'm going to look up your site and the study. I'm very curious how I'll perform in the study. That's great. Anything as last as a parting thoughts, is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you think is relevant to the conversation that we've had?
Well, again, the key piece is the world is changing very fast, and agile is not the endpoint because there'll be something after it.
Correct.
Right? And because of that, you have to stay very aware of the changes that will keep on occurring.
And the challenge is, how do we do that?
And it's keeping it's constantly learning. It is constantly paying attention. You cannot get lazy.
No.
You cannot put your head in the sand and say, "Oh, I'm going to be able to do this for the next 5 years."
No. Yeah.
Right? I use the example as the classic example is we're going to see a lot of jobs eliminated due to technology, and some of them are simple. I'll use the classic example. As we have here in the U.S., the Fight for 15, raising the minimum wage to $15.
Correct.
Which I personally am all in favor for. But what's going to happen is you're going to see if you go down to your local burger place, you're going to be able to order your burger from a smartphone.
Yeah. And
right?
I just saw on LinkedIn today they had the burger flipping robot.
Yes. We're already seeing that in the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
When the prices of oil went to $35, suddenly the oil and gas companies are suddenly going, oh crap. They had gotten very lazy in instituting technology. So a lot of drilling a well, and I live here in Texas, is very manual. It's a lot of human. So what's happened is, a lot of fracking wells couldn't make money at $35 a barrel.
Correct.
But they brought in a lot of automation, and they now can make it at $50.
Correct.
At $45.
Correct.
And it's all because they were suddenly pushed by outside forces to get more efficient and put more technology in place. And you know what they've done is, the number of active rigs in Texas dropped dramatically. It's gone back up to where it was back in 2008-9 with no more jobs.
Right.
We have the same number of jobs that we had before this and
it's happening all over. It's happening all over.
And you have to be aware of, can you be replaced by a robot?
Correct.
And a robot can be a software package.
Yeah.
It could be shipping your skills to India or China or wherever,
right.
Because it's the Philippines,
right.
because it's cheaper.
It is.
How are you going to keep your skills? Or like you were talking about, is if I'm a Scrum Master and I'm working on one technology, is that technology going to become obsolete and be replaced?
Right. And yeah, it's happening on the project I'm working on now.
Yes. We're going to see that the lifespan of technologies is going to continue to compress.
I know. It's exciting, it's challenging, and it's frightening too at the same time. Great. Well, if people want to connect with you, what's the best place to go?
My website is careerpivot.com.
Okay.
You can reach me at Marc, it's M-A-R-C, my mama knew how to spell, at careerpivot.com. Okay. I have a podcast called the Repurpose Your Career podcast, which you can find on iTunes. Great. And by the way, if you go to my website, at the top of the page, on top of every page, is my phone number.
I saw that. Great. Marc, great conversation. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
No problem.